Wave Me Goodbye, Chapter 4, Part 2. I'll just read the last line of the part 1 of the chapter and then we'll get straight into the book. Let's share everything, you and me, because we're best friends, right? Definitely. Look, there's another even bigger place up on that hill over there, a real mansion. That will be our new school, I bet. I stared up at it. It was very large and white and elegant, terrifyingly elegant. I felt my throat drying and wished I still had some dandelion and burdock. Will this lady be living there too? I asked anxiously. Oh yes, I think so. So, will she have servants? Well, obviously. You can't imagine a titled lady down on her knees scrubbing all the floors in that huge house, can you? I don't like the idea of servants, I said. Why on earth not? Jessica asked. I was frightened they'd be just as snobby as the St. Agatha's girls, and sniff at my accent and my pink knickers, and raise their eyebrows if I forgot that I mustn't say the word toilet anymore. But I didn't want to admit this to Jessica, because it made me sound so soppy. I don't think it's right, one set of people having to do all the dirty work for another, I said, adopting as lofty a manner as I could manage. It's mean and unfair, just because they weren't born posh. I suppose you could say that, but servants seem to have a much better time than the people they work for. Our servants were always having secret parties, though they let me come too, because they knew I'd never tell my mother. And Nancy, my mum's maid, often used to dress up in her clothes. Sometimes she wore them when she was going out with her sweetheart, just to impress him. She looked fantastic too, though of course it would be hard not to in all of the designer gear. I nodded, though I didn't have a clue about any of these designers, and they were the sort of clothes they made for posh fancy people. And Nancy was technically a servant, but Nanny liked looking after me. I know she did, said Jessica. Yeah, I'm sure she did. It was silly of me to say that, I said, apologetically. No, you still have a point, said Jessica, also wanting us to agree. She paused, nibbling at her lip. Shirley, have I put my foot in it? I blinked at her. In what way? Well, I just wondered. Is your mum actually a servant? She asked, going pink. Mum would be outraged to hear that. No, she's a managing director's personal secretary, I said, elaborating each syllable carefully. Well, she's going to be now. She didn't work at all before, apart from when she left school, when she was a typist in a solicitor's office. Oh, sorry. So now I've put my foot in it, said Jessica. Not at all, I said. Here, do let me take my suitcase back. You've been carrying it for ages. It must be hurting you terribly. I tell you, I can carry things heaps heavier than this suitcase, Jessica insisted. But when I forced her to let me take a turn, I saw that her palm was bright red, as if she'd been given the cane. I felt terrible, but knew she'd be upset if I commented. I took the handle and hauled the case along myself. I wondered how heavy it had been for Dad when it was full of brushes. What must it have been like, calling on house after house after house, mostly being turned away at the door? Even when he was invited in to display and demonstrate each brush, when he got out his order book to take the housewife's order, they would often sigh and say they weren't sure. She'd better ask her husband. She was sorry, but she couldn't possibly commit to any purchase without his say-so. Dad would act it all out for Mum and me, trying to make it funny, mimicking the lady, his voice all high-pitched and silly. But I could see that it was actually sad. Mum wasn't a bit sympathetic. She'd tell Dad he must be a useless salesman if he could never make a sale, especially with brushes, when any fool knew that every housewife needed a handful and the bristles wore out so quickly. Sometimes Dad got angry and told her to stop nagging, and sometimes he didn't even bother replying. He just sat there on the sofa with his arms dangling between his knees and his head bowed down. No wonder he'd been in such a hurry to join up with the army and become a soldier. Everything was happening in a hurry. Year after year, we'd been jogging along together as a family, And yet now Dad was away in the army, and Mum was going to work, and I was in a place called Meadow Ridge, which I'd never even heard of until 15 minutes ago. I thought Mum and Dad and I all fitted together tightly, like three pieces of a jigsaw puzzle, and now we'd all been abruptly broken up. It was a disaster, wasn't it? Though Dad might like being a soldier, and Mum might like being the personal secretary, I knew I wouldn't like it at St Agatha's with all those strict sisters and snobby girls. But I liked Jessica enormously, and as long as we stuck together, then everything would be all right. We were now trailing at the end of the long line of children because I was so slow dragging my case. I was so hot, my vest was sticking to my back inside my jumper. Jessica's blazer felt like a fur coat, but I couldn't take it off because I had to pretend I was a St Agatha's girl. Then the line gradually got smaller, and when I squinted up ahead, I saw that children were all being guided into a red brick building by the crossroads. That must be the village hall, I said. Stick with me, kid, Jessica muttered out of the side of her mouth like an American gangster in a film. You bet I will. I tried to do an American accent too, but I was no good at it. Annie and another WBS lady with a big clipboard were standing at the door. The little boy with the shaven head was leaning against Annie's hip, his fists clasping the stiff material of her skirt. Here we are again, she said cheerily. Now, I need to tick off your names and schools. I'm Jessica Lippman, Jessica said. I'm at St Agatha's, and this is my friend Shirley, and she's at St Agatha's too. Annie ticked Jessica off, but then looked at me, her head on one side. Aren't you a Paradise Road pupil, Shirley? I've joined the convent now, I said, flapping my big purple blazer. Are you sure? Yeah, she's a new girl like me. We're going to stick together, said Jessica. Annie raised her eyebrows, but gave me a tick and added my name to the St Agatha's column. Her colleague stared. Annie, she said sharply. As if it matters, said Annie. If they want to be together, why can't they? Go and wait inside, girls. I wanted to fling my arms around her neck. Thank you, I breathed. Yes, thank you ever so much, said Jessica, and we went inside hand in hand. The hall was already crowded with children. Village ladies were handing out cups of milk and a currant bun to each child. Our lady barely glanced up at us, just taking in our purple blazers. The St Agatha's pupils were right over at the back of the hall, waiting for Lady Amishion's cart to collect all the suitcases. Then you're to walk up to the White House in a crocodile, she said. Tick-tock, said Jessica. I giggled, so happy that I'd read Peter and Wendy and knew all about the crocodile who swallowed a clock. We pushed our way through the heaving mass of children, over to the large purple group at the end. Keep away from Sister Josephine, I said. We won't go anywhere near old Charlie Chaplin. We'll stick with the form below. We're both quite small, said Jessica. Yeah, but they'll soon twig I'm not really a St Agatha's girl, I said anxiously. It'll be okay once we get there. At this White House, you won't have anywhere else to go, will you? So they'll have to keep you, Jessica told me. They'll think I'm not posh enough, I said. Oh, that's total rubbish. Do stop fussing. It'll work out, I promise you. She helped me lug my suitcase right to the back, near all the girls in purple, pushing some little Paradise Road boys off a bench so we could sit down and drink our milk and eat our buns in peace. Watch it, one said angrily. Who do you think you are, shoving like that? I'm sorry, but these benches are for St Agatha's pupils, I said. Stupid snooty pants, he said, but then sloped off. There, he thinks you're posh, said Jessica. It was so noisy in the room, I could hardly hear her. You couldn't move for children, and yet now a whole load of adults were squeezing in too, peering intently at everyone. Several women already had hold of little girls, pretty ones with curly hair and clean faces. A big lady in a tweed suit and an odd purple hat with a little feather stood on a chair and blew a whistle. Ladies, ladies, she shouted. I'm Mrs. Henshaw, chairman of the Women's Institute. I've been put in charge of sorting out the children's arrangements. I allocate the children to their new homes. I'm afraid this is turning into a bit of a mess. Let's have a little order. Please be patient and don't attempt to choose any children just yet. We must let all the St Agatha's pupils go first. Apparently Lady Amyson's gardener has arrived with his cart. You can go now, girls, and deposit your suitcases in it. Jessica squeezed my hand, and I squeezed it back. We took our suitcases and stood at the back of the purple line. I kept my head down in case any Paradise Road children saw me. I practically bent double when I saw Marilyn Henderson nearby, but I managed to get to the door without anyone calling after me. St Agatha's girls were handing their suitcases to a strange man with long mad hair and ragged clothes. The 4 nuns were flapping around, gathering up girls. Sister Josephine was right at the front, well away from us. Jessica turned to me, smiling. See? We'll just tag along at the end of the crocodile. Simple. We waited with our suitcases. Jessica offered hers to the man who was wedging the cases into neat stacks. He swung it up easily onto the back of the cart. Then it was my turn. I tried to lift Dad's case, but I was so tired I could only raise it a couple of inches off the ground. Jessica seized hold of the handle to help. The man shook his head at us pityingly. He swatted our hands out of the way and picked up the case, but he was taken by surprise. The weight bowed his arms, he lost his grip, and it fell to the ground with such a crash that the locks burst open. My belongings scattered everywhere. All my books, Timmy's head, my smock dress, nightie, sponge bag, hair ribbons, socks, vest, and a pair of pink knickers with frills. I sank to my knees and desperately started gathering them all up, Jessica helping. The other girls were all craning round, giggling, remarking on my embarrassing underwear. Sister Josephine came flapping over to see what was going on. "What on earth is it now?" she demanded. She looked at my suitcase, then she looked at me. "What are you doing here? Take your wretched suitcase and all your belongings and go back into the village hall at once." "But she's coming to our school, Sister Josephine. Look, she's wearing a St Agatha's blazer," said Jessica. "Nonsense. She's the Paradise Road child you were so pally with on the train. Now do come along. Apparently it's a good half-hour walk to Lady Amyson's, so look sharp." "No, you don't understand, Sister Josephine. Shirley's left Paradise Road now. She's coming to our convent. Her mum's going to fix it. She's writing to you," Jessica gabbled. "I very much doubt that, Jessica. Please stop these pointless fibs and say goodbye to this little girl," said Sister Josephine firmly. "But I can't bear to say goodbye. Shirley's my best friend in all the world," Jessica declared, and she threw her arms around me. "For goodness sake, stop acting so hysterically. You've only known the child 5 minutes. Come along at once or you will be severely punished." Sister Josephine shook her hard. "And you, Shirley." She said my name as if it made a bad taste in her mouth. "Take that blazer off immediately and give it back to Jessica." "But I gave it to her," Jessica protested. "And you have no right to do such a thing. That blazer is the finest quality from Harrods. Whatever would your mother say?" "She wouldn't mind in the slightest," said Jessica. "Don't take the blazer off, Shirley. You keep it. I don't want the wretched thing." But Sister Josephine took hold of me and pulled it off. She snapped my suitcase shut and tugged it upright. "Now take your ridiculous case and get back inside the village hall this instant. Jessica, you will walk with me at the front. Come along, sisters. Come along, girls." She marched off so determinedly that her thick ankles and stout shoes were exposed by her skirt lifting up. She dragged Jessica along, struggling and wailing and crying out to me. I stared after them, crying too. "Hey, hey, cheer up, chicken," said Annie, hurrying over to me. "Oh dear, I didn't really think you'd get away with it. I'm so sorry. Come inside with me and we'll try to find you a lovely new home, hopefully with another girl just like your friend." "I don't want any other girl. I want Jessica," I sobbed. She put her arm around my shoulders, picked up my case and led me back inside. "You sit on that bench at the front. I'll make the other children squash up so there's room for you. I'm sure you'll get picked soon," she said cheerily. I sat precariously on the very end of the bench, still snivelling. I waited and waited and waited and waited. And that is the end of chapter 4. So let me know what you think as always. Did you think that Jessica and Shirley were going to get away with it and manage to get to the woman's school, or did you think they were going to get caught? Let me know in the comments below, and I hope you've enjoyed the story so far. Alright, bye!